Hey everybody, this is Larry Little.
And I'm Melissa Jackson.
And welcome to Crossing the Line, a podcast where we talk about those times when we lead and live with our head and we cross that line to our heart and vice versa. And Melissa, welcome to the podcast, and I'm looking forward to a pretty cool topic today.
You know, we need to talk about, this is the month of May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So this is a great opportunity to kind of focus on mental health and what is mental health to begin with.
Yeah, what is it and what is it not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've come a long way. Mm-hmm. I remember when mental health carried a stigma with it, and today maybe it still does in some areas. I don't know, but you know, used to when you talked about mental health, people looked at you like you were crazy. Mm. And if you were going to get help, they looked at you like you were weak.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And that's just not the case nowadays. You know, there is so many sources and access to services where people can focus on how are they doing internally, how is their mental health, and learn skills and tools to be in a better place to deal with frustrations that they have, fears that they have, whatever that may be. It's an opportunity for them to learn new skills.
Well, it is, and even now we have mental health days, you know, and I don't know what this means, but my wife will tell me from time to time that I have caused her to need a mental health day.
And she probably needs to take that when she can and have some space. But that's probably not exactly what May is all about. Okay. But it could be. It could be.
Well, as we think about mental health, I want us to think a little bit today about empathy. Because that not only helps us in our mental health, it also really helps others. And so I want us to spend a few minutes and let's just kind of jump into the topic of empathy. And even before we define it, you know, Melissa, let's look at just I'm a stats guy. I love stats. And our team has done a great job of compiling some stats. And I want to think about that for a minute in terms of what does the data say? And the data says that empathy, of course, it's easier for us to give empathy to those that we're closest to. Data says if there's someone, close friends, family, that kind of thing, we tend to have more empathy.
Somebody we have a connection with. There's some kind of familiarity in that relationship. It's easier to show a concern, a genuine connection.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the data also says that women in general tend to be more empathetic than men. And I don't think that's a hardcore black and white stat, but maybe that's true. What do you think about that?
You know, I think women have a history of being caretakers, being nurturing. And again, not saying all women are like that. I think personality comes into play as well. But there's that ability to mother, to protect. And so, you know, that lends itself towards some empathetic characteristics in relationships.
Yeah, I think you're just spot on with that. It also says, and this is really interesting, I think, that those who have empathy, who display empathy, are more likely to be satisfied in life. Are more likely to have that fulfillment, that self-fulfillment. You know, I think there's a lot to that. I think I've watched when we begin to become self-centered, when our world begins to focus on us, when we become the center of our universe, so to speak, emotionally. I've watched as that empathy level goes down, even physically, people begin to suffer, I think, and emotionally, and we become much less content. You know, I've watched that through the years. Another study, though, and I thought it was very interesting, says that when you have empathy in a situation, people tend to volunteer more. They tend to want to give, which makes sense. But here's the interesting stat: when empathy is increased, violent crime goes down. Violent crime. How about that?
There's something I think that you're talking about here in these stats that, validation, someone being able to validate another person, to show empathy for another person, it really helps bring that person up. It alleviates some of probably their thought processing, their spinning, it kind of pulls them out and pulls them in to connect, using that word again. But I think there is so much there when someone feels something from someone else.
I was watching Netflix recently, and there's a show on Netflix, and if you guys haven't seen it, I encourage you. It's a little rough on the language, so don't watch it with your children. But it's called Unlocked, and the whole theory is that this prison, and I think it's in Arkansas, the warden decided to open the doors to this one unit. And they were on 23/1, they called it, 23 hours in their cells, 1 hour out. And he reversed that and opened it 24 hours a day. With his thought was, I want to teach and I want to see if the men, it was a male penitentiary, if they can develop a community of empathy. If the older generation can help the younger generation would allow that and help the older generation. What would happen? Now it's very interesting, but at the end of the day, what they found was that incidences in the prison actually went down, and they experimented for several weeks, and at the end of the weeks, the experiment, they continued. They said, we're going to continue and we're going to expand it. So very interesting documentary there called Unlocked. I encourage you to take a look at it. Just be aware, red flag on language. Obviously, it's a prison. But it was fascinating to see what empathy did to those guys. Just fascinating. We also know, though, if you think about some of the stats, that empathy has actually declined by 40%, and that was back from 1979 to 2016 in young people, high school and college. They say that the reason for that, they believe, is social media. What are your thoughts?
I have a 12-year-old, and so, I watch and have watched for years now how being on social media or, watching shows left and right and videos and TikTok and all those things that are out there that kids can be exposed to, it really begins to cause them to become more narrow-minded in how they feel about other people, their perspective of other people. There's a perspective too of, I've got to do this, or I need to look like this, or, so there's less on really understanding other people and more of this evaluation, really trying to be like something else, or getting kind of stuck in a space of, just watching others that are not showing empathy. So a lot of different modeling out there. And I think it does impact kids. I think being disconnected through COVID, being, isolated, I think there's been a recipe that causes empathy to become low.
Yeah, I think so. They say that social media, has caused an increase of being self-absorbed and an increase in narcissism. And boy, I see that. I can get that. It's already difficult enough to be a teenager. That's just hard season of life for anybody. But when you throw in social media, who's teaching them to just exactly what you see, you have to be this, look this, do that. It's all about you trying to be something. I think we can certainly understand why empathy for others. They spend less time on thinking about others and more time thinking about themselves. Bottom line.
Yeah, and something for us to pay attention to is, empathy. Do you grow in that? Is that a nature versus nurture thing? Is it, what is it? What facilitates empathy, and how does one really hone in on becoming more empathetic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too, because not only this data we're going over, but science tells us that Empathy is a skill. Now, some people, like we just talked about, women may be more naturally nurtured, more naturally, but that's not an excuse for men not being empathetic. And it's not an excuse if your personality, it says it's personality driven. Maybe you're more people oriented and you just have that natural bent for it. That's not an excuse for those who are more task oriented to choose to be empathetic, because you can choose. It's a choice. It's not a feeling. It's not something that somebody has or somebody doesn't. You can't get it. It's something that we choose. We're going to talk exactly about what that is. I think it's important. I think it's important on the stage and that we find ourselves today culturally. The data tells us that bias has a lot to do with empathy. In other words, what they tell us is that people that are, and that goes back to what we said. We said the people that are closest to us, we tend to have more empathy for, right? Well, that means people that look like us, dress like us, act like us, we could be empathetic. We could be, gracious and empathetic. But when somebody looks different, acts different, believes differently, has a different value system, empathy goes through the floor. We just lose it, and that's sad. But the good news of that is that we can learn to raise that empathy. We can learn how to address, deal with, connect with, or just respect someone who is different than us.
I think that is so valuable to really function in that thought process, to allow yourself to know that it can be something that you learn, to become a skill. Just like in kids, you learn math, you learn about history. How do you learn skills that help you look outside of yourself and really understand others and understand the shoes that they're walking in? What does that look like?
No, you just nailed it. So empathy is, if it's not a feeling, if it's a skill, what is it? It is not having a pity party for someone. It is not agreeing with someone. It is not feeling sorry for someone. They don't want that. That's not what empathy is. Empathy is having the ability to accept someone even when you disagree or don't understand or don't align with their behavior. Which is
a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do.
Very hard because we make assumptions. And people assume that if I respect you, then I must agree with your behavior, which it takes a lot of strength to differentiate between those two and say, and we see this so much. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but we see this today in our politics. We see this today in the racial divide that continues to plague our nation. So we see this in socioeconomic differences in our country. So that, and if you take that, we have this tendency to judge. We have this tendency to, if I don't agree with you, I'm going to judge you, that kind of thing. And then you pile on the social media that's telling us to be narcissistic and self-absorbed. Then that leads to polarization, right? That leads to a divided culture, divided country. So empathy is a skill. It's choosing to get to understand someone based on where they are, not whether you agree with them or not, and respect them whether or not you agree with them or not, or whether or not you like them or not. It's choose. So it's a skill to say, I don't agree with you, but I accept. So let's break that down. So what are the components that make up empathy? To try to dig on that just a little bit. And a lady by the name of Christy Robinette actually wrote a book called Embrace Your Empathy. And we took that book. I think you found that book for us, and it's a great book. We took that and took some components that she listed in that book. And we're going to talk about those and break them down right now.
Let's do that. So the first one that she mentions is honesty. And so if you think about this is a characteristic that can lead to empathy. And so to think about honesty, how can you be forthcoming with someone else? So, we think about, we're all honest, right? I mean, we have honesty towards others, but if you look at that and think about, how are you open and honest with your thoughts and your feelings? It is not, speaking your mind every time you have a thought. It's not, being so direct with someone that it's all about your opinion, your expression, and you're gonna put that on someone else. Honesty is being able to use some kind of wisdom around that and knowing how to speak up, but knowing also maybe there are times where you hold back some thoughts or opinions. It's, really being able to kind of function in that middle ground where you can be aware and at the same time you can be mindful of the other person. And does this help them? Does this hurt them? Does it help them be able to engage with you at a stronger level? Does it not?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Honesty doesn't mean verbaging all your thoughts on somebody just because you think or feel them. Honesty means having the strength to discern when to be honest about what you feel, but when to share that and how to share that, and to be honest about your feelings is much more difficult because many times we download anger when we're really feeling fear. So anyway, it's learning. Honesty is an important component as long as we take that honesty all the way to the nth degree and apply it to what we're really feeling, what we're really trying to accomplish, and not just what our opinions or our feelings are, and then we lash out. That's not what it is, isn't it? I think that's important.
Yeah, an example here is the other day I was talking to someone, and they were frustrated with another person because that person, was not responding to them the way that they wanted them to in a work situation. They expected something, and they were not getting that. And so we talked about, recognizing, well, how are you feeling in this situation? What are you feeling? You're feeling frustrated. You're not getting the work, the response that you need from this other person. Well, what do you need to do with that? Honesty is you recognize that you're feeling that way. You got to decide, is this one worth going and dealing with this other person? Do you use that information and go have a conversation with the other person? Are you at a place that you can? Honesty is recognizing first where you are.
That's really
what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Really good. And I think the second component is really important. If you're going to have honesty, you got to have humility. And I think we many times think humility is weak. It is not weak. In fact, it's incredibly hard. It takes a very strong person to interact with humility and honesty, to have both of those. It's that I know that I'm imperfect. I know I have limitations. I'm not pretending to have all the answers. That humility is self-awareness that I can't, I can't solve all things, or my judgments may be wrong. And when we have that humility, then that really leads us to be able to be honest. And I think you've used this phrase before, honesty with EQ. That's what humility looks like, I think.
I read this the other day that, I was thinking about humility, and some of the opposite of humility might be perfection. And I read the statement the other day that perfection is an excuse.
Yes.
It's just an excuse. And so, humility recognizes that we're not perfect. It's not hiding from that. Nor is it on the other end where, I'm going to, be curt, or I'm going to be, again, I'm going to just tell you what I think. Humility is recognizing that, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to be aware. I'm going to communicate. I'm going to admit my weaknesses, and I'm going to be open about that in order to connect with you, in order to, have a commonality that, we're in this space where we don't have to be perfect.
I love it. I used the term EQ a minute ago, and that's emotional intelligence. We just need to clear that up. So you have that honesty with humility. And then the third one, and I think that is really important, is acceptance. Once again, we believe and we accept someone for what they are, who they are, that we agree with them. And people, I think many times we are fearful, especially on social media, that if we're not judgmental, if we don't draw the line in the sand and you are wrong, then we are compromising, or we are vulnerable, or weak. I think acceptance means accepting someone for who they are, whether you agree with them or not. That's not the issue. It's letting them own what is theirs to own, and you own what's yours to own, right? And you accept them for who they are, whether you like it or not. I know that in parenting, this is really hard because children make decisions that we don't agree with. Children make decisions that break our heart. But accepting them for who they are is an incredibly important path to having empathy, which is an important path to having a healthy relationship.
Which leads to the next one, and that's tolerance. So I think acceptance and tolerance kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. Again, tolerance doesn't mean that I become like you. It doesn't mean that I lose my identity or what I think or what I stand for. Tolerance means that I'm going to allow you to be who you are. I'm going to understand you to the best of my ability. I don't become you.
That's right.
I'm not going to,
That's right.
Become different just because you have a different perspective, but I'm going to allow you to be who you are, and I'm going to have an understanding, a tolerance to let that take place.
We did a podcast some time ago on political differences between parents and children, and I did that with my daughter, and we were on different spectrums, different ends of the political spectrum, if you will. But the whole point was that that's okay. I can accept who she is without agreeing with what she believes or without agreeing with behavior or choices politically. She can accept who I am without agreeing with my stance or my political preference. And if we can get there, I think it used to be that way a lot more than it is now. But that tolerance, it for someone, I think, goes a long way for empathy. And then one of my favorite pieces of empathy is gratitude. I think that component is essential. And I don't know, I just think that we have a lack of gratitude today. I think it's just hard for people to truly show gratitude, to be gracious in that, to look for ways to show grace to others, to be grateful, if you will, for things that maybe even the small things, but we get so, I'm going to use the word, I think we are an entitled society, and I think we're teaching that entitlement to our children, to the generations behind us. I think that we have, instead of gratitude, we have expectations, and you can tell that's a bit of a pet peeve for me, Melissa.
Well, when things are all about us, you can't have gratitude. We're focused on yourself, focused inward. You're not thinking about another person. This is something we're working on very strongly at home, showing gratitude and talking about, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It doesn't matter if it's what you want or not. It's important to show appreciation to someone else, that gratitude, to give gratitude, because ultimately, gratitude is not about yourself.
That's right.
Gratitude is about the other person. How are you giving back to the other person?
I mean, I think that's exactly it. Another component that I think is important, and the author brings out, is faith. Now, in my mind, faith is believing in something that's stronger than you, believing in something that is beyond what you can accomplish, believing in someone that is greater. Both of us are believers, and faith means one thing to us. It may not mean that to everyone listening, but she says, the author says, in order to really show empathy, you have to realize that there's something beyond you, and to have that faith, and to share that faith or exemplify that. There's a component that that is the inverse of narcissism. Faith is, you may be seeing, believing in something that's greater than ourselves. And I think that's important.
She defines it clearly as believing in the goodness, that there's something good in the other person. Sometimes even beyond how they act or how they present themselves. There's something behind them that is good in there, and you get a chance with empathy to bring that forward. There's a possibility to bring something out in someone else that maybe they haven't experienced or exhibited.
Love it. I love it. And the next is hope. And I think it's so important that we allow people to have hope, that we facilitate hope, that we, when you have a hopeless society, a hopeless culture, then you have a very selfish, very self-centered, very negative culture. So I think showing empathy allows someone to have that hope that, hey, she may not agree with me, but I've been heard. And that leads me to have hope.
I think she saved the best and maybe one of the hardest ones for the end here. And that is the last one, and that's forgiveness. And so empathy has to have forgiveness in it, because empathy cannot be, I'm only going to give that to you or demonstrate that to you. if you are right on track with me and you do what I want you to do, forgiveness is being able to offer something to someone else beyond maybe what you've experienced with them, beyond how you feel about them. It's extending yourself in a way that is very unique to be able to let go of something.
To let go of something. Incredibly important, and what a great word. So just to recap this as we wrap this up, empathy. It's not feeling sorry for, it's not showing pity. It's being able to, as you said, walk in someone's shoes and accept them for who they are, and the components of that that we've been talking about: honesty, humility, acceptance, tolerance, gratitude, faith, hope, and forgiveness. What a goal for all of us. And I wrap this by saying all of these things, if that's what empathy is, all of these things are a choice. Empathy is a choice. You either choose to grow your skill and choose to demonstrate empathy, or you choose not to. It's not easy. It's not comfortable, but it's the right thing to do. And if we had more empathy in this world today, I think this world would be a better place. I think our country would be in a better place. I think we as individuals would be in a better place. So I'm going to give you a last word on empathy, and then my favorite part of the podcast.
Well, I think as we were talking about these, that, some of these characteristics here expressions of empathy can be easier than others for us. And so it really gives us some places that we can lean into and work on, and lean into the areas that we do a better job at, so that we're more well-rounded in understanding what empathy is and being able to demonstrate that to others.
And speaking of empathy, as we go to the dad joke of the day, we need to have empathy for this little boy, Melissa. Are you ready?
I'm going to get in that space.
Get in the space.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Empathy. We're talking about empathy. I always like for my jokes to, kind of correlate with what we're talking about. Yeah, we got to have empathy for this little boy. Why did the little boy get a new butt?
Oh my. Some thoughts are coming to mind. I'm thinking about my 12-year-old and what she would say, but you go right ahead.
Well, why did the boy get a new butt? Because his old one was cracked.
Right on track there.
Right there it is. Oh, we got to have a little fun. That was a little edgy, wasn't it?
That one
right
always.
I wanted to bring it to empathy. I thought I did a nice job there.
You did a very good job.
Hey guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We hope that you took away some things that would help you as you continue to develop your relationships and grow your relationships. Remember, empathy is a choice. Thank you so much for joining us today on Crossing the Line. Thank you for making a difference in the lives of those you love, live with, and lead.